Hello, everybody. Today is Wednesday, July 18th, and we're bringing you episode 114 of Block Digest at block height 532,480. Today, we've got a special guest, Rice Crypto. I almost did the exact same thing.
It's so easy to do that, man. I mean, literally, I used to go by Rice Crispy. So when I got into the crypto space, it was just a switch of words. But it snap, crackle, hodl, man. So I totally get you. It's all good. Rice Crispy, Rice Crypto. That's me. Thanks for having me, guys.
And we got Mr. Rick with us as usual.
Hey, everybody. Good to be around. Good to have you with us, Rice. Going to be a interesting conversation.
That it will.
And Miss Janine.
Can't wait for my Kodak moment.
All right, so I guess to just dive into it and give a little bit of intro before you can give us a little breakdown yourself, Rice.
Yeah.
Rice was, I think, around a month ago, if I'm correct, hired by Bitcointopia.
A little over 6 weeks ago now, about 7 weeks if you include the week after. I was hired. Okay. I was hired May 31st. And officially took the role publicly on the 1st of June.
All right, and you were pretty much hired to kind of handle like community management and a little bit of like the public outreach aspect of things?
I was actually hired as an executive in the company as a chief marketing officer. So it was a little bit more than those jobs were part of my job duties, but I had an executive role in the company.
Okay, so marketing and pretty much like actually like selling people and like trying to like get them on board with actually like buying something from them.
Selling the idea, not selling the land itself. I wasn't a salesperson, but I was marketing the message. I was hired to kind of be a spokesperson, simplify the message of Bitcointopia and relay it to the world in an easily digestible format.
Okay, and I guess just to like get right into it, you want to give us a little bit of kind of a breakdown of like your experience working there and like some of the facts that you came to be aware of during your course of employment?
Yeah, no problem. First off, like the whole situation of how I got into this is because I'm a content creator. I have my own YouTube channel. I'm on Steam it, all at Rice Crypto, and I was sought after because of the message that I push in my content creation. I talk a lot about something that's called practice change, where I encourage people to be the change that they want to see in the world. And when I say that, I talk about people not being defined by their past, by their mistakes, not being limited by their situations and surroundings, and to learn from all of their good and bad experiences, and to always remember that all actions have positive and negative consequences that we should think about. And if we practice these things daily, we can improve ourselves. And in the crypto space, we talk a lot about changing the world, like the financial aspects of the world, and changing some of the technological aspects of the world with blockchain and cryptocurrency. And I say, if we're going to be trying to change those elements of the world, we need to start with ourselves as humans. Like humanity needs to also change in that process. So when I was hired or asked to be brought on board, it was a perfect match because the vision of Bitcointopia was immense. It was awesome. It was to give Bitcoin a physical home, to create a futuristic city, a technological city based off of a Walt Disney concept, the original concept of Epcot. And the vision was something that I truly, truly believed in. So now to summarize what happened, I got hired on May 31st, was officially announced on June 1st as the chief marketing officer. I was an executive at the company. When I was hired, I already had known about a little bit of past regarding the CEO. We've had some interactions for several months prior to me taking the position. And some of the agreements with me taking the position were, one, I would be paid in advance because he offered me X amount for a salary, and I would be paid in advance in good faith, knowing his past reputation. And also I would have full transparency regarding him personally and regarding the company. And as an executive, we're supposed to keep checks and balances on one another. I'm a full-time student for business administration, and you're supposed to perform checks and balances and keep one another accountable. So that's what I thought I was getting into. There was already a red flag to begin with, but there was other people involved, and I was told there would be this transparency, and I was paid in advance in good faith. So I've been doing my research, because as soon as I was hired for the job, I was committed to do a presentation in Denver, Colorado, the 27th of last month. So I had to get a really good understanding of what was going on with this project so that I could do a presentation and actually make sense. And the project was immense. I mean, there's a lot of logistics to all the things that I had to get an understanding for to do the presentation. So while I'm doing my research, I'm doing a little bit of marketing and networking, trying to find individuals I can bring into the company. One person that I had talked to in the very beginning was a friend of mine named Audrey, who's a real estate agent. And I'm not a real estate person. And so I went to somebody I knew who had more education and specialization in that area. And I asked if she could review the website and give me some feedback of some things that I need to look into for my research that I may not be thinking about. And when she did, there was her concerns were wanting to know what kind of deeds that we were dealing with, and she wanted to see a copy of the land contract. So from day two, I had been requesting a copy of the land contract. Now, when I got to Denver, I had contacted the chief operating officer to confirm the amount of land that we owned in total, because I figured that would be important to bring up in my presentation. And the amount of land that I was told conflicted with the amount of land that I was told the week before from the CEO, and conflicted with the original information I was told when I was hired. So that was my second really big concern, red flag. So I go to Denver, do my presentation, and that was a success. I come back. It was a Wednesday that I did this. I got back on Thursday evening. I took that weekend to do a summary on my presentation and the whole experience of the event, notate my expenses. The rest of the people at Bitcointopia can have access to what took place in Denver. So when I get back and I'm done doing the summary, it's now Monday, which would be 2 weeks ago yesterday, or this past Monday. And I talked to the CEO of Bitcointopia, and I was expressing the fact that I needed to get my plane ticket to go to Vegas, because I was supposed to fly out to Vegas last week for Freedom Fest. I had some appointments set up, meetings with Adam Kokesh, with Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante, and some other individuals. And it was to talk about possible partnerships, talk about possible investments and things to that effect. But I was told we didn't have the money for me to get the ticket, and the ticket was only $450. So that was my third concern, and that was the third red flag that came up for me. And that's when everything really kind of took a big turn for me personally. And at that point, I was really, really being adamant about them, because I was doing a lot of HR work and bringing on some people. I had brought on a chief financial officer who was going to, who had agreed to start August 1st. And I was trying to bring on Audrey, who's the real estate person. She's also done project management and dealt with some crypto convention type situations. So I wanted to have her involved, but I also want her to dig more into the real estate aspect. I wanted her to find out more specifics, because something wasn't seeming right to me. And I had her in touch with the COO. She sent a resume. She asked for a copy of the land contract. She was told they were revising it. She asked if she could see a copy of the old one, and she never was able to get a copy of it. And then the communication kind of dwindled down. And now a week ago, this past Friday, I talked to the COO, and we had a discussion that we wanted to have a meeting. We were concerned about some inconsistencies, and we wanted to have a meeting. The chief housing officer and the chief financial officer were also wanting to be a part of that meeting. We are all having concerns. So it was agreed upon by the four of us that we needed to have this meeting on we could go this past Friday. And then all through the weekend, it never took place. And then my communication with the COO had diminished. And Monday afternoon, I get an email from the CEO of Bitcointopia saying he had some concerns with my performance, and I should read the email and get back with him. I did. I got back with him. The conversation got heated. I told him he needed to calm down and chill out and talk to me like a civilized human being. I went back, wanted to do my homework. Later that evening, I went back to my email to reread that letter that was sent to me, and I saw an email that said a data transfer has been complete from Google, and it was saying that basically my company email account was terminated. And I went to log into Twitter, and my company Twitter account was revoked. And then I went into our Telegram group where the CEO posted that I was a traitor, and started a new Telegram group encouraging people to go there. And I banned him and the COO, closed the room off, and I've invited you in, Brian, so you've been able to see the interactions that took place. And Jay Snip went in there and saw the interactions that took place and see what's going on with the community. And so then I wasn't fired at that point. Okay, so then we get into some more words, and still wasn't told I was fired, but then he publicly said I was fired. And I asked him, to keep this professional, like people should do. And he decided he didn't want to do that. And so the same day that I was publicly fired, the one thing I meant to say in the Jay Snip interview was that 2 other employees also stepped down. There was 5 of us. There was a COO, a CEO, myself, a chief housing officer, and a chief financial officer. I was publicly fired. The chief housing officer quit. Chief financial officer said he's not going to take the job. So now it's back down to 2 people. And that's kind of where we're at now. And so he's, the COO is publicly defaming me, talking trash about me, false accusations, false statements. And I've served him, Bitcointopia, Bitcoin Incorporated, and the COO all with cease and desist orders. He's admitted he's received it, but yet he still is defaming me. And the thing that I keep putting out on social media is, instead of defaming me, why not prove me wrong? Why not simply just disprove my allegations? And so that's the summary of what happened. I'd like you guys to give me your thoughts on it. I'll go ahead and answer some questions, and then I can go into some of the details that talks about the facts.
Well, I mean, first off, to me, it sounds like, from my perspective, this entire operation is not being professionally or efficiently managed in any way. Based on how you were handled as a former employee, and then also just the fact that absolutely no effort was taken to kind of provide you with information to correct inconsistencies that you'd uncovered. So I guess the first thing I would want to ask is the inconsistencies with the amount of land owned. Have you been able to kind of dig up or uncover any concrete information on that?
Yeah, I have, and what I have found in my research, what my realtor friend and some other landowners have found, all we can determine is 4.97 acres that's in his name. Now he's claiming that there's other land in other people's names. Actually, what he said specifically, I don't know if I have it written down here, but it was something to the effect of he has land in random places in secret names, and legally you can't do that. And if he has a partner with this company Bitcointopia, that information should be public to myself as an executive that was supposed to have transparency. So that was a big inconsistency. I've also talked to pretty much all the people who are selling land out in that area, and from what I can tell, my research seems to be correct. Now, so just so you know, you can legally do something to the effect where you're selling land that you don't own. But the only way you can actually do that is if the person who is purchasing that land is aware that what you're doing is purchasing the land later. Like you're saying, I'm going to build this city, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to sell you a spot in the city, in the residential area, but I don't own the land yet. I need to gather funds from doing this to be able to buy the land. That has to be transparent. That's not the situation. The website claims, the website claims, 10,000 acres, and they're selling 500 to 1,000.
Yeah, so there's like definite like legal requirements for disclosure and transparency that are not being met by any means.
Yeah, and usually when you're dealing with real estate, there should be contracts, there should be lawyers involved. Lawyers aren't a necessity, but escrows. An escrow person is a necessity because you got people who are buying land in another state, from being in a different state. They're supposed to have the opportunity to go and look at that land and confirm that that's what they want. So the money gets put in an escrow account as a limbo, so the person can confirm, yes, this is what I want. And then once they agree, then the escrow is released and the person who's selling the land gets the funds. He thinks because he's in Nevada and the way the law works with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin being tax exempt, he thinks he's putting himself in a different position, but he just hasn't done his research that well. And if you follow up with my research, you'll see that what I'm saying is correct.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is like explicitly here on the website, it says that any purchases of 1 to 3 acres will result in a land deed from the state of Nevada within 3 to 6 weeks of purchase. Have you been able to actually confirm anybody who's given Bitcointopia money has received a land deed?
I know some people who have bought land in late May, early June, and nobody's received it. They've been delayed by another week or two. So it started out as 3 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, and now it's looking like 8. So I don't know what's going to happen in 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And are you aware, regarding, you said you've been able to confirm that they own 4.97 acres of land.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any estimates or like based on people who've sent them money, how many acres they've actually sold and whether that's in excess of what you've been able to find they definitively own?
Well, I don't have any definitive because I'm here in North Carolina and I was supposed to be going to Las Vegas and getting definitives. But from what I understand, it's somewhere between 22 and 33 total acreages. That doesn't count the actual number of people. So what you're saying is correct.
Okay, so based on what you've been able to gather, they've sold somewhere between 4 to 6 times the amount of land that you can see they actually have ownership of, and they haven't made any disclosure of any kind of deal to take funds and purchase land in future that they don't currently own.
That's 100% correct. That's my full understanding of what you're saying is exactly the situation.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Rick and Janine, if you guys want to ask some questions, I don't kind of want to hog the whole section here.
Yeah, I was gonna. Oh, you go ahead, Janine. I'm having some network trouble.
Ladies first.
Always.
Yeah, so I mean, at least with my understanding of the situation and the individuals involved, I'm aware of a history where there are at least a number of allegations that there has been, money solicited for various purposes, and then that money was under the condition that it would either be returned or that money would be made in interest on that from trading practices. And so there's a number of allegations regarding that stuff. So the idea, like, because of the individuals involved, I definitely would not feel comfortable in this situation where, people are sending money on the condition that they're going to get land, and that's not even being handled in a very proper or transparent way. So that's definitely a concern for me. What exactly is the language regarding, like, how is it really just he has a shop and on Bitcointopia and people are asking for money, or he's asking for money for land? Do they get like a confirmation email, or do they get like some kind of document about what their rights are regarding that purchase or anything like that?
I can't say 100% for sure, but I'm almost positive that nobody's received any of that type of information. There may have been a confirmation saying, yeah, I got your payment and you're going to get your information in 4 to 6 weeks. But I don't think that anybody received like a tax deal. Nobody's received anything in the mail. At the very least, I can say that. Nobody has had anything mailed to them. No kind of contract, no kind of tax deal, which it says on the website that once you purchase, that you will receive this and this and this. So, but that doesn't seem to be the case. And as far as the shop, they have a shop on their website where you can actually go on there today and purchase a home, right? A 3D container home. You could purchase a 3D printed home, a container home, or these other different homes, and you pay with PayPal. So in theory, you can buy a house today, and if you go to their buy land section onto the website and you scroll down just a tiny bit, and the 21 where it says 1 to 25 acres, you'll see it says each plot has, has, currently has road access and services such as power, water, sewage, and internet. So based off the verbiage on their website, they own 10,000 acres right there. Is like part of the Bitcointopia expansion project. They're going to sell 5 to 1,000 of those to people individually. And then right now they have road access and all those utilities available. So in theory, you can purchase you a little 3D printed home. You can buy you an acre or two of land, and you should be able to move in within a week.
Mm-hmm. But there's no utilities out there, and there's simply a tent. So if you like camping out in northeastern Nevada, then have at it.
Yeah, that's actually, just to do a follow-up, that's actually what I'd be the most interested to know is, like, obviously this kind of project, you're going to need a lot of construction workers, like, especially if you're saying people can move into these areas in a very short period of time. Like, even though they're very simple houses, you still need a lot of staff to do that. So how has that been going? Do they actually even have staff on hand to build these?
Yeah, like I said, the day that I was publicly fired, the chief housing officer and chief financial officer stepped down. The chief housing officer was in charge of the construction element. So he was the person that was doing all the back end, the research about everything that we needed to do, the permits, to do the survey and all that. So he stepped down. He was the one who was going to be responsible for that. And our idea is that we were going to try to find local people in Elko to work with us, like try to help stimulate the economy and help people locally. So, when I went into this with all intentions to make this project work. And I was trying to bring the right people together to make a good team so that we could bring this vision to a reality. Because again, the vision of this idea, it's awesome. You can't deny that. It's just the execution of the plan is what became a problem. I love dreamers. I love people who have an imagination and think outside the box, because that's what helps to change the world. But if you don't have a plan to go along with any of that, it's just a dream.
Yeah, there's all sorts of regulations that come with buying a home, and from state to state, and just trying to line up the proper procedure to get that going is a lot of work in itself. And, it does seem pretty dubious to be selling these homes right from a website like that, and you're supposed to be able to move in a week. And
in theory, he should have hired an attorney before he hired anybody else to make sure that what was going on with Bitcointopia was on the up and up. He's got a space there where he's hiring a chief legal officer. If you're an unethical attorney and you feel like taking a position, go and hire, apply for the job.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the sort of thing that you would expect to see, and this is why this is pretty confusing. I mean, as far as like if this was going to be something that you'd want to invest in. So, I got a question as far as like when you were initially hired, you were guaranteed this full transparency and sort of taken on as an executive. What was that like before the conflicting amount of land? Was just some of the red flags kind of just like the way that everything was set up, or just the way that like I'm trying to figure out as far as like the first red flag.
There was a 3-week time period before I found inconsistencies in the amount of land. So when I was first brought on, because I was familiar with the CEO and had a relationship with him, there were people who had reached out to me to let me know about their situation with him, which was lending him money for a court case that he was dealing with for that he's currently dealing with for money laundering charges. He's currently on bond for federal charges of money laundering. So I had found out that some people had given him loans and was promised to be returned X amount. He'd also received donations. In fact, that company, Defend BTC, which I guess would be a nonprofit in his eyes, is one of the partners on the Bitcointopia website. All the partners on Bitcointopia's website are all one of the different creations of the CEO.
Okay. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of that where, there's some, definitely like some lawsuits back and forth to see whether or not what's going on is okay and all done legally. And, I know Nevada's like got a little bit of that Wild West reputation. So maybe jumping with that, like that's what they're thinking and everything. But yeah, it's not the right way to do it if you're going to be offering to all these people all over the world. And I just, another curiosity about this whole meeting that was supposed to take place between yourself and the CFO and CHO, and sort of just like before then, like, was it sort of like a kind of known that like this is sort of this isn't going the way we want, and then maybe this meeting didn't take place because of backdoor conversation? It sounds kind of like you were crossed out because you had a little bit of hesitation as that everything was on the up and up. Do you feel like that's what happened?
Well, I was very clear in communicating that the point of the meeting was for open communication, honesty, and full transparency. Just transparency. I said transparency because that's when I say transparency, I shouldn't have to define it or clear it or anything to that effect. So
right.
That's what I was pushing for. The CHO, his concerns were that he had been trying to get the survey done for 3 weeks and we didn't have the funds to get it done. And then he was getting issues with getting paid. So to go back on that, I was supposed to be getting paid in advance the beginning of the month. July 1st, I didn't get paid. So
you didn't get paid. They didn't have money for the plane ticket. They don't have money for the surveys.
Well, I ended up 7 or 8 days later getting half of my agreed pay. And I worked for 2 weeks of the month. So technically I got paid for what I did, but the agreement was that I was supposed to be paid my full month in advance. So I'm owed half of my pay. Plus I had never been reimbursed for my Denver trip that I paid out of pocket for my first pay.
And so, yeah, that with the, with the possibility of some case lingering around is definitely, whenever it comes to looking at the way that, like we're saying, there's supposed to be a legal framework for this large amount of funds and land provided and, all the sort of property taxes and things that come along with that to make sure that all that sort of stuff is lined up. And yeah, this sounds definitely not on the up and up. And, I'm really appreciate you coming forward to let us know about all this stuff. Because I
guess let me ask you guys, just and each, if you don't mind, each of you just answering, like, after us talking, after you going into the Telegram group, after all the social media rant going on, like, what do you think of this entire situation? What is your thoughts individually?
Well, me looking at this, like, none of this adds up. Like they don't have the land that they claim they have, and it's, again, like you said, there are ways to legally set it up to purchase later, but that requires transparency. But they're making direct claims of land ownership that they don't have. They're making
allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. And there's also the claims about utilities, road access, and so forth being set up, which I've seen no evidence to back up. Like the fact that, to your knowledge, nobody has actually received a deed or a contract after sending money. Personally, like I think that this just looks completely suspect, and I would advise anybody I know to stay as far away from this as they can.
Okay.
Personally, I would want to fly out to Nevada to speak to people and look at the land and all that. But yeah, just like from the cursory glance of all this, it screams red flags all over the place as far as like, we live in a space and time where scams are evident and prominent. And so, you have to be real cautious about all this stuff. You really want to verify that this information that you're getting is valid, and this certainly just doesn't seem that way. Just the fact that they're selling the land from the website without I don't know. It's really scary to hear that that's going on, and these people aren't getting deeds already, and and nobody's really gone out to this land. It's I wouldn't touch it, honestly.
Yeah, from my perspective, I don't think, because Shinobi and Rick, I don't think they actually knew that much about him prior to the court case regarding money laundering charges came up several months ago. I know a lot more about him since at least a year and a half, I'd say, because I am associated with people who have history with him, and some of those people have made allegations regarding at least the loan aspect, not repaying loans and stuff. So from that perspective, I would definitely not trust this project if he was running it, because he just has way too much history of that going on, and this seems to be a very similar situation where he is at the very least, if it's not intentionally malicious, he is at least overestimating his ability to manage something like this. So, I mean, I under normal circumstances, if it was being run by a completely different set of people, I would at least be interested in it, because I myself am into this whole tiny house movement. So I've done a lot of research on that just because I'm personally into it. And so even though I'm not a construction person or anything like that, I do have an awareness of how much work has to go into doing something like this, roughly. So,
That's
so
kind of an understatement when you're talking about building a city.
yeah, yeah. So if they were just wanted to build, I mean, Adam Kokesh has built his own house. Like, it's entirely possible to do something like this, but he built one house for himself, and it took, I think, at least a year. I don't remember exactly. I did watch a number of his videos when he was building it. Like, it's a huge project to do it right, even with, like, I mean, he was using recycled tools. I'm assuming like a lot of these houses that were being built were not going to be using entirely recycled tools. I didn't look at the material list. But it's a
No, but I
huge
mean,
project.
that was things that, I was researching and trying to form strategic partnerships with people dealing with hempcrete and other things to that effect, because I was trying to make this as much of an eco-friendly, and with the sustainable energy sources, and try to do like non-GMO farming. So things like that, to get back to like the basics of like how we're supposed to be as humans, and not deal with all these chemicals that Monsanto and people are putting in our foods. And I was looking at this as like being a template of ways that we could try to give an example of how we can change the way that we live. And like I said, the vision was great. It was just, unfortunately, the people that were involved. And since you know about that past that you're talking about, that's the exact reason that I was hired, was because that same thing that you were just saying to me, I had the same conversation with the CEO. And it was, and I've got all verifications of all this in our communications. I can share screenshots with people, and he's told plenty of my friends. And if anybody knows him personally, they would know that this statement is true. That he said that the reason he hired me as the chief marketing officer was because people think he's crazy, and he needs somebody else to represent this, that he can't be representing this project. He was very aware of that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's the vision, like y'all are saying. I mean, it is one of those things where it is got a lot of people excited to the idea of, land deeds on the blockchain. You hear it, and it's like, really, whenever you're looking at these projects, people, you have to investigate who's behind them. And I mean, this is,
do your research, do your own diligence, be smart. Don't, that's the thing that people don't think about with cryptocurrency. The big change over for somebody to go from the way that the financial system is currently to trying to live on cryptocurrency is that you are your own bank. You are 100% responsible for yourself. So you need to start taking responsibility for your actions as an individual. And that's what I encourage people to do. Don't be an idiot and just blindly give money to anybody just because the idea sounds great.
yeah, because there's like a few places that I've seen where they're doing this. I know that they're doing this in Dubai, and there's some big investors that are working in stuff like this. And I mean, like those sort of projects, maybe there is something that's going to come out of it, and you really have to still do your own research.
I've met some of them, and I will say some of the people down in Puerto Rico with Sol, some great people. I've talked to some people down in Costa Rica. I've talked to people in Mexico City. I've talked to people kind of strategically doing things like this. Even Akon, the rapper, he's now doing something in Africa where he's going to be building a city like this. A prince from Saudi Arabia is going to be building a city, not necessarily crypto based, but a futuristic city, something to compete with Dubai and be more sustainable and friendly to the environment as opposed to what Dubai is.
And I think like a good example is like, yeah, those things, they are taking these proper steps that we're talking about and doing their due diligence because, I mean, we've seen this like Liberland 2.0 and, you know, like just basically the idea of, you know, just starting from fresh and doing it right. And the idea of that sounds very, you know, enticing, but the reality is
I'm an anarchist and voluntarist, man. It's like almost a dream come true when you think about it like that.
Right, but it is like we're forcing something on a lot of people instead of letting them voluntarily choose. And that's where it does kind of feel like, you know, we need to do this the right way from within the system, working to try and steer it. And, you know, I like these ideas, like we're saying, but it does feel like it's a lot more work and it's going to take a little bit longer than we expected. And we can't just run fast and loose with, you know, selling all these things without, you know, doing it the proper way. So
and funding too. I mean, that's the big thing, funding. You know, there's a whole lot of things that have been promised about this project to landowners that are not going to be able to even be possible, you know, and I don't know why that they're being publicly stated. So it's unfortunate, but a lot of the landowners are looking into legal recourse right now. So if you're a landowner and you're not in the Telegram group and you're interested in talking to somebody in regards to what legal actions and things that you have available to you, feel free to reach out to me, ricecrypto@gmail.com. And I got my YouTube channel people could check out. They can reach me through that way too by commenting on a video. So I'm definitely here to help the community as much as I can. And I'm here to defend decentralization because decentralization to me is transparency.
yeah, and it's hard work too.
So I appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity to come and share this information with people because I think it's important that people are aware of the possible allegations that I'm talking about. And again, these are allegations, and I asked the CEO, please, if I'm wrong, please prove me wrong and provide the information that I've asked you to provide so that you can show the transparency, so you can show the ownership. You know, instead of defaming me, prove me wrong.
Yeah, good point.
And I think Janine had kind of one last point she wanted to make, tying in with Rick's comment before we move into the rest of the news stories.
Sorry.
Yeah, just tying in general, because you guys were talking about, you know, people are too willing to give away their coins to people or get tricked into giving away coins for projects that at least overpromise or at worst are malicious. And I was actually doing a poll the last 2 days asking people how they lost Bitcoin in the past, or if they hadn't lost any Bitcoin, they should have responded with, how do you think what do you think is the most likely way you would lose? And the obvious winner was accidental loss, which is things like, you know, losing your seed, things like that, wallet malfunction that you cause or something like that. But I had a section at the bottom that people could give their own answer and they could reply with it, the other category. And most of the responses I got were about people sending money to scams, things like that. So it's definitely a problem. It's not the biggest problem.
I'm surprised
but
BitConnect didn't come up.
Yeah, I mean, BitConnect would probably be under other. Yeah, it was kind of hard because Twitter gives you really limited options for making polls. So I probably would have put BitConnect under other or maybe theft. It depends. I mean, BitConnect, I would say theft is something where you didn't actually intend to transfer your Bitcoin into another coin. But yeah, so it's definitely, I definitely think that this problem with, you know, these projects that aren't really transparent and are making promises in this community is a problem. So it's definitely good that you're addressing this.
Well, since you're saying that, let's as a community push people to be transparent and not participate in their reindeer games if they're not going to be. Like, we don't have to support them. There's a reason why those people exist. It's because they keep getting money. But if they're not going to provide the we the people have a right to know these things. And if you're not going to provide it, then you as a person don't have to support what they're doing. Don't feed the machine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, we just live where all this speculative nature is coming in, and it's just like people just throw these things at different projects without really glancing at it. And you just hope that maybe they'll watch this and another couple interviews done, and maybe people pick up and start hearing about it from even outside our little space here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Cool.
Well, like I said, I really appreciate you coming on, Rice, and kind of breaking this down. Like things like this are immensely important to actually get out there so people can really try to dig in and verify things for themselves. And like I said before we started, you're welcome to stick around for as much of the rest of the show as you want. We kind of
Yeah.
just like break down stories and then have like a little conversation about each of them.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna just turn my camera off for a second and step away, but I will return within the next like 2 or 3 minutes and join in the conversation.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Yeah, it's great conversation there.
I shall return here in a second. I'm just gonna turn my camera off.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going on, dude? What has been going on?
Well, the first thing, Joinmarket has released an update with a few different improvements. And if we dive into the release notes here, they've dealt with a few potential issues as far as disconnections and issues with stalled coin joins to kind of speed up getting back into a join with honest makers, so that you pretty much don't just keep stalling out in rounds that don't complete. A bug with disconnections where you had handle conflicts in IRC when your client connected again, because Joinmarket pretty much uses IRC channels to kind of coordinate the coin joins and advertise makers who have liquidity available for people to mix with. Introduced support for the multi-wallet feature with Bitcoin Core, so you can kind of keep your wallets segregated. Introduced the RPC credential cookie so that you don't have to use the username and password. A bug with the signing for SegWit, because it pretty much uses the sig hash flags so that each person can individually sign their inputs as part of the CoinJoin protocol, so that nothing funky happens. They've reintroduced support for non-SegWit takers and makers, so that anybody out there not using SegWit, although it's pretty much predominantly SegWit at this point, you can still mix with people. And reduced the default makers fees based on kind of what market activity has been happening. And so I kind of just wanted to throw out there, this is a project by Adam Gibson and Belker are the two people that I'm most familiar with involved in the project. And it is the first CoinJoin implementation that's actually built up a solid user base and liquidity for functioning. So anybody looking out there who is concerned about the privacy with their transacting on chain, I would definitely recommend checking out Joinmarket and giving this a try. It has the ability for people to kind of leave their client online and provide liquidity for others looking to mix, and you actually are provided fees that way. Pretty much anybody staying online to offer liquidity is paid a fee, and anybody who comes on just for a coin join and then leaves pays the fee to the makers staying online. And there's also a tumbler function where you can kind of leave it running to go through successive coin joins and really like mix your coins around instead of just doing a single coin join and leave. And for anybody not really too familiar with tinkering around with anything but a GUI wallet, there is actually a Wikipedia with a lot of in-depth instructions for using different things. And one thing I want to note real quick is that being an IRC coordinated thing, I would recommend that you go in the wiki and take advantage of the Tor support, or at the least use a VPN, because you are exposing your IP address to IRC servers when you connect. So, get out there and start fucking keeping your shit private, guys.
Yeah, man. Just keep joining our coins. Like, I wonder if this is like a client that you download and you just participate in this Joinmarket, or is this something that you can implement in a wallet? Like, or do each wallet sort of implement their own Joinmarkets, and how that works?
Joinmarket has its own wallet, and it can function on its own, although it's advised to use with a full node, and it can be used with a prune node, so you don't have to have the entire copy of the blockchain to hook it up to your node.
Well, yeah, certainly awesome developments there with whole privacy side of things with CoinJoin and yeah, like the tumblers, and even saw Samurai's working on a whirlpool that used Boltzmann, and yeah, this thing's just going to constantly improve. It's going to be interesting, but it does take people to get on there and start working on it. So if you got the goods to get on there and start working on it, and maybe join your coins and get this thing moving forward, we can get our private Bitcoin really soon.
And just last kind of tangential thing to mention, if anybody still hasn't checked out the Building on Bitcoin conference, Adam Gibson also has a CoinJoin XT proposal, kind of looking at the potential of kind of integrating CoinJoin and Lightning Network when you're moving in and out of the Lightning Network to obscure things a little more. So CoinJoin is definitely the thing to start looking around if you want privacy tools that you can actually use right now.
Yeah, man, it's just awesome. Really, when you start to think about all the developments that are coming down the line with privacy and Bitcoin, I really kind of stop worrying so much about it whenever people are like, oh, but it's, you can still track this and track that, and, where's the fungibility? It's coming.
So get out there, guys. And I guess sliding along.
Oh, man.
Involving Bitmain today. So this first one, Block.one, their $4 billion ICO, going to do an IPO. And two of the noted people who are going to be involving themselves in this are Peter Thiel, who I'm sure Janine will have a lot to say about, and Jihan Wu. And as far as Bitmain's involvement in Block.one and EOS, anybody who watches has definitely seen us tear them apart a lot quite recently. In my opinion, the entire project is a joke and not viable in the long term for a slew of different reasons. But as far as Bitmain's investment in Block.one, there's three different pieces I want to lay out here. One, not too long ago, Antpool announced that they would be putting their hat in the ring, so to say, to be voted in as a block producer for EOS. And there's, again, to reiterate, 21 block producers that are pretty much voted on who have total control over forward progress in the network and other things such as the amount of virtual RAM available necessary to run smart contracts. Block.one, then not too long after, announced that they would start actively participating in the voting process for block producers. And despite not owning a majority of the coin share itself, they owned well in excess of what would be necessary to dominate the voting process, given the number of coins that have historically been involved in voting for block producers. And now Bitmain is going to be taking part in an investment round for Block.one. So I think that kind of spells itself out as far as how Bitmain is trying to insinuate itself in multiple ways into a controlling position in the EOS project.
I'm back, and that is absolutely insane to think about, man. Because like Bitmain is it's like they're fighting decentralization by having control of the networks.
Yeah, I mean, like 4 billion in an ICO. I mean, like that kind of investment. I don't know. It says that there's definitely something that they see there. But I mean, yeah, it does sort of lead towards that problem of like, I don't know. It's like all these, there's only so many people with the funds to help invest and raise those things up. And I can kind of understand Bitmain's position as a corporation. They need to returns for their investors, and just trying to make money and project outward. But it certainly is
didn't they just
against
open up a new round of in private investing, like in Japan or something like that?
They've actually been rumored to be mulling an IPO as well. But I mean, like,
yeah,
that's what I was thinking about. I thought it was actually already, and I thought they already were doing the IPO. I didn't know it was just like still kind of talked about.
But like, this company is like, at this point, I'm very confident that they're going to be pushed out of the monopoly position as far as mining in Bitcoin, but they are still insanely well capitalized. And there are so many other shady, like damaging things that they're moving into as far as future plans in this ecosystem.
Yeah, it just like goes against the ethos of like what we're doing. And it's like at that point where it's like, okay, I mean, like, come on, it all kind of goes back to Ant Bleed with me. And I'm just like, there was some intention there that, kind of shows that the favorability of like the revolutionary aspects of what we're trying to do here is not necessarily what Bitmain's after.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and Peter Thiel too. I mean, like Thiel, he's a guy that I thought been talking a lot about Bitcoin as being the future, and he's been talking well. So to see him invest in EOS like this, that's where I feel like there is something they see to this. And I've even sort of seen this myself, as far as like, look, there's a lot of developers on Ethereum, and a lot of those guys are running into trouble with scaling issues, and they need something to develop on without those issues. And that's what I feel like EOS is for.
I got mad love and respect for Dan Larimer, man. That dude is, that's confusing to me about this situation. Like it doesn't seem like any of the negativity is coming off on Larimer, but he was one of the people who created the network, and I know there's network problems. I know there's going to be bugs, but it just doesn't seem, there's something doesn't seem right about it, and that kind of worries me. And I have nothing but respect for Dan Larimer. I'm from Virginia, and he's from Virginia, so.
I mean, I really have like a polar opposite viewpoint of Larimer.
Okay, that's cool.
Like, mostly to keep it with like the project itself, though. I mean, like the whole thing, it's not really scalable. I mean, like, for one, the entire block producer dynamic is pretty much just whoever owns the most EOS winds up de facto in total control of the network. And like their virtual RAM architecture is kind of like their equivalent of the Ethereum gas model. And that kind of falls to the same dynamic. Like, you can't really scale an app without having a shit ton of EOS to buy up virtual RAM for your app to use. And then to like get to the blacklist aspect of things, I mean, that's just not viable at all. I mean, to kind of look at like, what Nick Szabo talks about in terms of social scalability. Like, when you introduce blacklisting like that, how do you verify that? Like, how do you actually verify that there's a reason for something to be blacklisted? Like, if a user requests it, how do you verify that user? If there's something nefarious, how do you actually like back that up with evidence in the real world? And I mean, you're quickly back at the point where it's like you have to build up the exact same kind of fraud departments that exist in the conventional financial world. Otherwise, it's just like I could go post some random guy's EOS address, send some tainted money to it, and get his shit blacklisted. How does he appeal that? Like, you know what I mean?
No, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and it's questions that people should be looking for answers to. And so, I mean, since you're saying it, and since we're talking about it, I mean, what is it with people in the space, especially people who have been in the space for a decent amount of time, who you would call OGs, that seem to be almost like turning into what they were fighting against?
I mean, I think it's just the inevitable influence of money, like whether it's just a hunger for more money or like a loss of faith,
sad.
so to
It's
say,
just sad to
along
think
the way.
about that, though. Just so sad. You know, I think of somebody like Roger Ver, who, like, in the beginning of Bitcoin, just seemed to do so many great things as a voluntarist or as a libertarian. He was just doing like awesome things, and like to me, like all that started shifting and changing last August and stuff. And to me, it kind of goes back to what you're saying. It seems like a very greed oriented thing, and it's sad. You know, it's like the same Star Wars theory that Luke becomes the dark, or you know, you become what you hate, unfortunately, and it's sad, and we need to change that shit.
I'm sure most of my viewers won't believe this, but I used to actually really respect the shit out of Roger when I first got into the space. And so
Me
did
too.
Mr.
Me too.
Hoddle, to anybody who knows him. And it's like that impression just burned itself into the garbage so fast in like the last 2 years.
But that's happening with, it's not just him. He's just one of the more public ones. I mean, it's happening more and more with all those OGs, and it like really makes me, it saddens me, because like when I first got into the space, I was trying to, you know, I was not emulating, but I was looking up to these people and what they were doing for the space and trying to show respect. And then it's like, wow, dude, what the hell happened?
Yeah, I don't know. It does seem like it's a mixed bag of, you know, people that might step away from the space that are OGs that come back because they hear about something, and then they still haven't really capitulated as far as like, you know, there being a real answer here that, you know, we can solve, but it does kind of require, you know, everybody to sort of get on the network. And, you know, but yeah, the amount of money coming into the space and the amount of just geopolitical speculation, it's like, you know, there are people that definitely have their own little incentive of like, oh, you know, I've always wanted to move to that part of the world, and these guys are saying they're going to help me out. And so, you know, I'll just do what everybody's doing because that sounds like fun. So I think that there's a little bit of that going on too, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it doesn't really surprise me too much is just because I think, you know, while there are definitely a lot of people in Bitcoin who have been around a long time and their principles have not changed, and they are still have been doing, you know, great work over the years. Obviously, you know, getting into Bitcoin or hearing about Bitcoin early doesn't guarantee that that you got in because of principles, or that your principles will remain invincible to the influence of money. For example, influence of money, Peter Thiel, or Thiel, however you pronounce it specifically, in case anyone is not aware of his background, the biggest concern I have about anything that he touches is that he is, I don't know if he's still the CEO, but he created a company called Palantir, and Palantir is one of the, at least, companies that was contracted and responsible for building software that the NSA uses, including X-Keyscore. So yeah, companies who help the NSA are not my friends, and I don't think they should be friends to anybody in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't know. You get up that high, I feel like they're just going to step at your door and say, play or get out. But yeah, I feel like that's definitely something you should pay attention to. I mean, yeah, it's just, you know, got a lot of money behind him, and so any sort of investment he makes sort of, yeah, grabs a headline, but certainly doesn't mean he's the smartest person in the world when it comes to Bitcoin, but he does sort of know what he's talking about a little bit. It's just, you know, it takes a while for people to capitulate.
Kind of reminds me of John McAfee a little bit.
No. McAfee is rolling the dice as he goes along. He does
have some knowledge, though. He has knowledge. He definitely knows.
He's got knowledge of how to manipulate people. He's an interesting character, but like, I don't know. I don't know. I kind of see them coming from.
I'm not a fan, but you know, it's just I see a lot of similarities in some of those aspects.
I'm kind of a fan, but not necessarily. It's one of those things that's entertaining to watch.
I do like his currency independence thing he put out. I don't know if you guys checked that out, but that's really very cool and very interesting, and I like to support that movement.
I know he was recently food poisoned. I hope he's doing well.
I can't think of anything but the hammock when I hear McAfee.
Well, I live in North Carolina, and I just found out not too long ago that his mining facility is in Raleigh. I'm in Winston, so that's like an hour and a half away. So I was thinking about trying to like make a road trip out to Raleigh and just go see the facility. And because when he had the food poisoning situation happen, he was actually hospitalized in a hospital here in North Carolina.
Yeah, man, you should definitely do that. You know, building up the network definitely requires a lot of those on the ground handshakes and getting to know one another. So yeah, I would do that.
Be interesting. Plus, I mean, I think it's the largest mining facility in the United States. From what I understand, I could be incorrect on that, but I think his mining facility is one of the largest, if not the largest in the U.S.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to really make a claim to that. All I've seen are the pictures of it, and I'm not really sure size-wise as far as like individual operations. I just know like co-locating facilities and things.
Right.
But
So,
slide along your poop.
Before we slide along, I want to mention that there's a viewer in the troll box saying that because the Bitcoin price is mooning, that we shouldn't be focusing on these more cerebral topics, and I completely disagree. This is exactly the time, because people will be paying more attention, and we should be focusing their attention on things that are more important than the price.
Yeah, don't take your eyes off like what's actually going on just because you see green. I mean, there's still a world that goes on around you.
Yeah, and what's 10% in this long game? Come on, guys.
10% is just getting back some of the action that we've lost. So when we see like 100%, then I'll start paying a little bit more attention. When we start getting back to that all-time high, get above $10,000, then I'll start getting excited about like pushing. Price is going up, but it's such a great thing. Still good for the space, but I agree with you. Like we need to keep focused on what's at hand and not like get distracted by a little bit of green.
And it's a good point. Like, I don't know, when these prices do come up, a lot more people do sort of just like, oh, well, let me see what's going on in this thing that's raising in price. So it's good to be talking about it whenever people are tuning in.
All right, slide time.
Something else with Bitmain.
Time to segue.
So Bitmain is also opening a 20,000 square foot office in Silicon Valley. And so this is kind of keeping in line with a lot of the expansion work they've been doing. Like Jonathan Bertrand covered in the recent special edition, they've opened a subsidiary in Canada. We've also covered the Ant Creek subsidiary that they opened in Washington sometime last year to open mining facilities there. And it's like, this article is pretty much just like the office is being open and then kind of a summary of their recent activity, such as their investment round in Circle, which is working on a stable coin. And what I most want to point out again is their investments in the Opera browser, which is integrating a crypto wallet.
Didn't that just come out?
It's been out for a while, but the crypto wallet integration just came out. But
I think it just got released, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. But like my bother there, and I'm going to tie this back into the EOS investment, is Opera has recently been heavily invested in by Chinese VCs, including Bitmain. They have just integrated this crypto wallet, and they're also working on an AI-powered news service that would pretty much custom tailor things to like the individual. And to tie these things together, as I have recently, like you have a browser that they've invested in, which is tagging and tracking your data, with a built-in wallet, which will tag and track your financial use with crypto, because I guarantee that web wallet is not being built in a private, secure way. It's likely that just the same old SPV model that's leaking shit tons of your metadata. And Opera is working on that news feed that's going to take all of your information and feed it into tailored news, while Bitmain is also working on ASICs for AI algorithms. And so to look at like this and kind of what they're doing with Opera and these AI ASICs, and back into like the influence they're trying to build up in EOS, like I said earlier, I'm confident they're going to be pushed out as far as a dominant or monopoly miner influence in the Bitcoin space. But it seems like everything they're doing is trying to establish things that either allow them carte blanche to do things like censor transactions or track and surveil all of your activity. And like I don't think they're going to be a threat for mining centralization in the long term, but there are so many other dangerous things this company is doing in the space.
Yeah, I mean, like they're AI, working within a browser, also watching your financial transactions and your search history and all that sort of stuff kind of combined. Sounds pretty dangerous. And yeah, I mean, they've just got so many more investments from all around to sort of projecting their power to where I really do feel like, yeah, the whole mining centralization thing, I don't know. Seems like we got to keep talking about that for a little bit longer, but it doesn't seem, yeah, I think it's gone. The idea that Bitmain's producing, most of the retail Bitcoin miners that are efficient nowadays, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm kind of even curious how much involvement can they even have in Bcash whenever they're doing all this stuff all over the place. And I mean, like, we have seen some infighting there between the guys up there. So I don't know. It's one of those things where, yeah, I kind of understand like their investments and stuff, but it's scary. And there's also this little bit of, maybe it's doing a little bit of help there as far as like they're not able to really put in that much effort into Bitcoin Cash App. I mean, it just seems like they'd be spreading themselves thin.
But I mean, it's like they're very well capitalized. And despite the fact I think their mining production is not going to keep them in a monopoly position, it's still a big revenue source. They're like turning into a VC. They have this ASIC line. Like, they're not going anywhere.
I agree, but it is smart of them to technically diversify and expand into other areas, especially if the concept of how we mine currently may change, and with technology changing so much, that's a hard game to stay on top of. And it's easier for them to be doing the things that they're doing. Working with Circle and working with that stable coin is a very smart strategic move for them as far as that's concerned, because stable coins are obviously an issue when you got things like Tether. And if you've got a stable coin that's backed by a financial institution, it sounds better. I wouldn't personally use it because I'm not a Goldman Sachs fan, but it sounds better to the general public when you've got a stable coin that's got an association with a major financial institution.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a lot bigger draw for that tokenized fiat. And I mean, whoever does it, like, it's going to help markets mature and make arbitrage quicker. So I mean, I like you said, I wouldn't use it, but I think it would bring a net value to the markets in this space.
Yeah, and I could definitely see these. I don't know, the whole New York, San Francisco, and the potential opportunity at IPO. I mean, like, that relationships are building up for sure. All right, man. Is that all that's going on with Bitmain for right now? I don't know.
You want to take us into the Kodak story, Jenny?
Yeah. So yeah, this is kind of funny because even though this story is, I didn't put enough sourcing in my section, but this article covers it well enough just to get the gist. So basically, I think we covered it before on the show, but back in January, it was shown that a company that was, at least they claim to be licensed, and they, at least for all intents and purposes, appear to be very heavily integrated with Kodak's business. They were doing this mining scheme with some miners called cash miners that were made by Kodak. And I mean, you can look at the past episode, but basically the scheme that they were advertising was not going to work because, first of all, you had to pay $3,400 up front for the miner. And actually, I don't even know if that's the upfront in total, because in this article it says they would pay a fee for a 24-month period. So I guess that means they're paying that much per year. I have no idea. It's just a very messy, scammy sounding scheme. Anyway, this article is about how that scheme it fell apart. The company called Spotlight USA that was licensed, or at least claims they were licensed to do this, has shut down because apparently them. Oops.
You're back. We can hear you.
Oh, sorry, froze
All
up
good.
for a bit. Yeah, so the scheme has apparently collapsed. But the funniest part, and I'll send you a tweet, is that if you actually read the article, you would get the impression that this was somehow bad for Bitcoin, that this is like a scandal. But as I explained on Twitter yesterday, sorry, my computer's really slow and I have no idea if I'm breaking up right now.
No, we
If you can show this, I actually got a lot of attention because I criticized this article yesterday because the writer from Forbes the way he wrote the article kind of implied that this was a big deal for Bitcoin, and everyone is just like Peter Todd, a bunch of people were saying like, this doesn't make sense. Why is this a bad thing for Bitcoin that this scam got shut down? So I was like questioning the way that he was framing this entire story. And if anyone is not familiar with this whole Kodak thing, and also with the ICO that they are still apparently doing, I don't know how that's going to turn out now. But if you want to see that, I have this all in the thread about why it's very fishy and stuff. So it got a lot of attention. I was cited in bits online with Safety as well. So yeah, this got a lot of attention when I was criticizing it. But basically, what I found irritating was that this Forbes journalist wrote this article kind of saying, oh, this is a scandal in Bitcoin. But actually, Bitcoiners were some of the people that were primarily the ones calling this a scam all the way back in January, and also the ICO as well, which is actually being done by a company that is also using Kodak's brand as well. And so I just really questioned the way he was framing this, and I also found it interesting. If you scroll a bit further, you might have to go back to the main thread, because I also pointed out that Forbes back in January had actually written a press release for the ICO that Kodak was doing. And I don't know if they mentioned the mining scheme at all, but basically Forbes made no effort whatsoever to call out this mining scam as a scam. They either ignored it or I don't know, but they didn't put any effort into disclaiming it, whereas a bunch of us were doing that. And yet they put out this article saying like, oh, it's a scandal in Bitcoin, even though I asked the journalist like point blank, like, did you actually interview any people like who were victims of this? Like, did anyone actually fall for this? Or was it just a really badly executed, scheme by a large brand? Like, if no one was a victim, then it's not really a scandal. It's kind of just embarrassing for Kodak. And he never answered back. So no idea if anyone was actually victimized by this thing, even though it was never going to work, so it would have been effectively a scam. But no victims that we know of. Like, if anyone was, like, reach out to us, or I guess Forbes. But there doesn't seem to be any victims, and so I don't see how this is a scandal, and I don't see why it should reflect badly on Bitcoin, because it's, first of all, the miners were not, I don't think they were actually evaluated by anyone in Bitcoin. Like, Kodak just made them, and then they licensed or did not license, but basically gave permission for this company to use the Kodak brand on these miners. And then it failed pretty easily. So I don't see how this is a scandal. I don't know why Bitcoin should be affected by this. In fact, the opposite happened. Like, this was announced yesterday, and the Bitcoin price shot up by several $100s. So yeah, I don't see the scandal. Also, I apparently attracted the attention of David Gerard, who is the 50 foot long blockchain author or something, famous for that. And he was pointing out stuff specifically about the licensing that Spotlight was given, and how Spotlight and When Digital is the company who is doing the Kodak ICO, the Kodak.one ICO. And how I think he actually linked to a form where it was all the licensing conditions for what When Digital was allowed to do with the ICO. So that's pretty interesting if you want to see that. But yeah, I just find it hilarious that these journalists are so eager to just put things on Bitcoin, or everything to do with a cryptocurrency and ICO token. It's like a negative for Bitcoin. It's just frustrating.
It's what's, I get what you're saying, but from a devil's advocate point of view, it's a hot topic. And as a writer, especially if somebody's trying to be like up and coming and doesn't have like their own audience per se, it gives them, a lot of people are looking for this, because especially since, I mean, all this whole year has been the mainstream media trashing Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, keeping this market manipulation going and keeping these prices down. So I don't know if the price going up is in their plans. And maybe, by spreading more FUD, it creates more people to think, and people get scared, and, FUD takes over. So I just think it's just more of a ploy to create more manipulation, and it's just a hot topic. So it's like, it's in the real world, it's sexy. It's a sexy topic. So we got to write about this sexy stuff so people can read. We can get these advertisements. And we can make sure we're paying for our publication.
But I mean, that's like one of our biggest problems with like media outlets like this, is they don't do any research or due diligence. And I mean, like at that point, like, fuck you.
Like, that's what awesome people like you guys are here doing. That's what people like myself do. People like Omar Bam, Ken Bozak, Ben Simchi. I mean, there's a lot of great people out in the space that I would consider to be alternative media, whether or not they claim to be or not. Whether or not you guys claim to be, you guys are.
Well, I mean, like, come on, that press, it's like supposed to be the fourth branch of the government, and it's supposed to do and serve a purpose for the people. And right now it's really hurting the people. I mean, like, everybody is so confused and ready to argue, and you've got this and I've got that, and let's get at it. Your team's this and my team's that. And it's become weaponized in a way where, I mean, like, you got guys like Forbes, they're supposed to be this like reputable information, which, like, that's just sort of a joke now. Like you're saying, it seems like the only reputable information is alternative, because all those things have been corrupted. And this whole Kodak story, like, I remember doing it. And also, you remember that their price jumped? It's like their stock price jumped. Everybody was doing this, like, oh, let's do an ICO, let's do something in crypto, because,
or use the name blockchain, like, what was it, the Long Island Iced Tea blockchain?
Yeah, I mean, and then your stock price pumps, and then, you cash out and you make some money on the side, and you say, oh yeah, we hired this company and to do this thing, and it turned out to be such an obvious scam that we shut it down, or some sort of way to frame it, and you could still make some money on the back end in the stock market. I was just thinking that when you were saying it, it's like, oh wow, I remember looking at their stock price that day and it jumped. So
it's just manipulation, man. That's all it is. And it's like, if you got money, you can manipulate stuff, and it's sad,
Yeah, so I just want to point out that actually Kodak is being investigated, or at least being scrutinized by the SEC, because they've been suspecting since, I think, even January, when they made the announcement and the stock price shut up, that they did that, they used that as an opportunity. Because let me try and think. I think I can't remember. It might have been just the stock of the company that is actually doing the ICO, but I remember that the people involved in When Digital, they might have actually bought Kodak's stock before they did the announcement. I can't remember if it was Kodak stock or just the stock for their own company, but there was definitely something going on with that.
I remember it was Kodak stock, because I remember we were talking about it, and as we were talking about it, I was curious what happened to their stock, and I saw it had jumped like 10%, something like that. So yeah, Kodak getting a little bit busted with this whole cash miner and ICO and all that stuff is I mean, we were pointed out back there. We were one of the ones pointing out how ridiculous it was and how crazy this space had gotten. And I'm sure that it was at CES. It was a big event. I'm sure some people probably invested in it, but not that money, hopefully. Not big enough to warrant a scandal.
Right.
Yeah, Shinobi, if you can show the image. Yeah, so this is something that we saw yesterday. There was a CNBC article that they published it right before, like, the price shot up, or right when the price was, and you even see
why it won't bounce back, and it's up to $7,500 right now.
So I mean that left image in itself is hilarious because you literally see like Bitcoin price won't bounce back, and then you see breaking news: Bitcoin price jumps 11%. But then it's even funnier because they actually went back and changed the title afterwards to say Bitcoin is surging.
Oh, that's awesome. I like
yeah. So they not only like published an article right as like the Bitcoin price is shooting up, but they went back and changed it to say
at least
it's shooting
they
up, but
covered
we're
it.
skeptical.
At least they covered it. That's so much better than what happened in our White House with our recent issue with our president in Russia. So.
Oh yeah, let's like, oof. Let's say that.
I mean, but it's the same kind of deal, you know. At least, but you know, like those guys could have covered their information. Like the government, the press the White House press could have covered that immediately instead of waiting another day saying, "Oh, we made a mistake in how we said things." You know, at least I gotta say, CNBC, at least as soon as they messed up, corrected it like right away. Which is, I got, you know, it's funny, but at least they corrected it right away.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. Let's try and avoid the politics because
I'm sorry.
That for one of our last shows, I think that got kind of charged for some viewers.
I was just making a comparison. I wasn't trying to bring up the political issue.
Yeah, you're good, man. But Rick, you want to take us into this Coinbase?
Yeah, like as we're talking about, you know, headline changes and these sort of things coming out, somebody saying one thing and then they say another. So we saw this past week, Coinbase tweeted about 5 different coins they were reviewing for their process to be listed on Coinbase. Mm-hmm. Those were 0x, Cardano, Zcash, the BATCO token, and Stellar. So, a couple of days ago, this article in Bloomberg was saying that Coinbase had approval from the SEC and FINRA to acquire 3 separate companies in the financial sector, Keystone Capital, which is a investment firm out of Chicago, Vinovate Marketplace, which is an investment platform, and Digital Wealth, which is a financial services company. And, they were real excited about this. Elliot Suthers from Coinbase says, being approved to take ownership of these licensed entities is one more step towards our ultimate goal of allowing our customers to trade security tokens on our platform. There are many more steps in this conversation needed with regulators before this journey is complete. And I imagine, they're excited about it because they're trying to jump into this whole competitive, like being more of a altcoin exchange than just a brokerage. And now yesterday they walked back that statement. And SEC spokesman said the agency did not give San Francisco-based Coinbase explicit approval for the deal, and FINRA declined to comment. And Rachel Horowitz of Coinbase, she jumped in to say, it is not correct to say that SEC and FINRA approved Coinbase's purchase of Keystone because SEC was not involved in the approval process. The SEC's approval is not required for the change of control application. And it seems like they're saying, we didn't really get the approval, but we didn't really need it anyway. And she goes on to say, Coinbase has discussed aspects of its proposed operations, including the acquisition of Keystone entity, on an informal basis with several members of the SEC staff. And, doesn't mention the other 2 firms that were discussed. And, feels like the press release of, is like kind of showing their intentions. Like that's their discussion with the regulators, because like we're saying, this walk, forward, see if you get yelled at, and then you might have to take a step back is kind of the way things are moving with the SEC and the CFTC. So, but Coinbase, they're trying to move in that direction of becoming, a big exchange with all these different tokens. And, when this looks like let's see. Yeah, they're just trying to remain competitive. This is the way I feel like. I mean, we say this, and I usually say this whenever we talk about Coinbase and their, maneuvers that they're doing in the space. Is like, they see Poloniex being acquired by Circle, and Bitrex has kind of got some support out there in Washington, and it's like they've already got all these tokens and stuff listed, and they want to participate in that, and they see it as a big piece of the pie that they want to jump into, and so. Getting these acquisitions would allow them to easily, make it a more easy process to issue these tokens. So, because Circle's moving towards brokerage and trading desks to help their customers buy and sell these tokens that are securities. And, yeah, if they were able to acquire these companies, they'd be able to do the same. So honestly, like the whole Coinbase thing, it's like I really kind of given up hope with the idea that they were gonna, most of these companies, like we're saying, so much money coming into the space, you kind of start to see their intentions. And Coinbase for a long time was we sent people to Coinbase that, you can go buy your Bitcoin there. But for sure nowadays, I definitely stick to the Cash App.
Yeah, that's what I recommend.
Look at Bitflyer. I know that Gemini's really trying to do things the right way too. But as far as just trying to stay in their wheelhouse, and yeah, it's not that surprising, I guess, to see this sort of thing nowadays, where people are saying one thing and then the next day they have to walk it back. Which like we're saying, that's something that CNBC just did with this whole price rise. And I know we got another story in the lineup about this. And it seems like it's business as usual right now to sort of just like take that Wild West step and see if somebody yells at you. If somebody yells at you, then you might have to walk that back. So always give a press release a couple of days to see if they got to walk it back.
What I would say about Coinbase too, just in case like people aren't aware, people should research a group called the Digital Currency Group and see who these folks are. You can just
talk about Barry Silbert's group.
Yeah, and we're talking about NASDAQ and a bunch of other people that are involved, but they're one of the owners in Coinbase, and NASDAQ has stake in Coinbase. NASDAQ is getting ready to launch an exchange. I would not discount Coinbase for anything. Like Coinbase is probably going to be leading this game more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you mean, and like honestly, I'm not really that worried about the DCG. Like Coinbase is like technically incompetent up the wazoo. I'm more worried about some of the revolving doors as far as like people and regulators' positions in the U.S. government kind of working their way into Coinbase than like any ties to the financial system. You know what I mean?
It's scary to think about that, and then the fact that they're applying for the banking license and trying to become their own financial institution. It's different than what Litecoin did. With Litecoin and TPay, by buying a stake in the bank, it gives them an opportunity to now be able to have banking that they weren't available to have, and also offer banking to other cryptocurrency companies. But it's not Litecoin trying to be a bank. So that's kind of, that's a big deal when you think about it. So I think they're kind of laying quiet and trying to see what other people are going to be doing. But I still really believe that Coinbase is going to be really leading this brigade.
It could be something that happens with NASDAQ and Coinbase. But, I mean, that really wouldn't surprise me that much. Like we've seen with, Poloniex being acquired by Circle and Goldman. That was kind of a shock. But after that, I think that, that wouldn't be too surprising. But it does sort of show like, yeah, they're moving more towards the traditional financial sector as far as like the way that they want to offer these instruments and like multiple instruments, and sort of just fell by the wayside as far as like, oh, there's this revolutionary technology that can change the financial constructs of things. And now it's, we're not seeing tech really being hired, really good, developers. We're seeing more and more of the finance stuff and the side of things where regulators are, like you're saying, Shinobi. It's like kind of worrying seeing like, maybe some people going in and out. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Guess next up, just kind of a quick mention. So BlackRock Capital is one of the biggest financial institutions in the world in terms of value, but kind of hilarious conflicting coverage. We pretty much have this Reuters article that came out recently talking about BlackRock looking into blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies and kind of setting up a group to study it. And this article, it kind of had like a more positive spin and emphasis on like BlackRock actually exploring cryptocurrencies themselves and actually adding it to their portfolios. But then we look over here at this interview on Bloomberg where the CEO pretty much just goes, no, we're not. There's zero client interest in cryptocurrencies or public blockchain assets at this point. And I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but this is kind of giving me a little deja vu back to some of Jamie Dimon's comments last year.
It's a fraud. Nobody can trade it. If you trade it, I'm firing you. But we're going to be opening up and offering some of those tools. Yeah, it's yeah. You know, these investment firms, they're going to play back and forth because, you know, they want to make sure that they get it their right entry.
Mm-hmm. But it's just like, you know, I find it's like, I mean, I could definitely see like a small demand, like not overwhelming like amounts of their customer base like screaming, give us Bitcoin now. But to state that there is zero interest in investment from any of their clients, like I just find that hard to believe. Like given the fucking wave of like bank CEOs turning into a more positive light and talking about Bitcoin, more favorable regulatory statements from agencies like the CFTC, just like all of the indications of huge institutional demand, to just say that there is zero client interest, like I don't buy that.
I was watching the CFTC in Congress this morning. There was over 2,000 people watching that. Come on. Yeah. There is something going on. People are interested and they're definitely hearing stuff about it. They just don't want to admit it yet.
I agree. It's about to pop off, man. We're about to see some crazy stuff go down here in the next month or two.
Next year is going to be nuts.
Like, especially like, you know, just like set aside like all of the public indications of such interest. Just look at the dynamics. I mean, a huge part of the reason that very wealthy people shove their money into all kinds of equities and assets and you know, institutions like this that build up balanced portfolios is to protect their money from being devalued, to create like structures to minimize tax exposure, to realize growth that is guaranteed to be losses if just holding liquid assets like cash. And like, you know, especially you add in like the tax evasion aspect and just like how increasing encroachment of just surveillance and moves to give like legal basis for just seizure of assets. Like the idea that this class of people in the world is not looking at this space, like it's just delusional to me. Like even if not like fully sold or ready to dump money in it, anybody with a high like net worth portfolio is going to be looking at this space because of the immense potential for protection from seizure and devaluation that something like Bitcoin offers. Mm-hmm. All right, so we ready for a slide along?
Let's do it.
All right. So this one.
Does Rice have to go? Because he said he had to go in a few minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I gotta bounce here in just a second, guys.
All right, man. Well, we really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about what else going on there at Bitopia. And I'm sure our viewers appreciate that too. And hopefully the word will get out a little bit more.
Yeah, no, again, man, I appreciate you guys having me. I only asked that people not to shill myself, but if people could follow me on Twitter at Rice Crypto and check out my YouTube channel. Rice Crypto is the name. So I'd appreciate the support and get up to me if like you got any information regarding this project I was talking about or any questions or concerns. Feel free to reach out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, your Twitter links in the show notes of the video. So anybody who wants to reach out to you for any reason, you can find his Twitter account in the links below.
All right, much love, guys, and I encourage everybody be the change by practicing change.
That's a great motto, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Much love, guys.
Thanks for coming on, Rice.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so into
where
an update for Green Address.
Oh man, okay. Green Address. Yeah, give me the update.
They are getting to a point where, as much as I love this team, I love this wallet, I have been hesitant in the past to recommend it because of the two-factor authentication design, which I've seen a little too many people screw up and lose and pretty much just go raging around on social media that their coins are lost, despite them being crystal clear about their terms of service as far as access to coins, and them not willing to just give coins back when you've lost your 2FA, because the entire purpose of that is to allow them to give you an added bit of security and do things like green address zero conf, which is something they'll do with the multi-sig setup, because they sign off on one of the things that a merchant or somebody can have a little bit of a higher degree of certainty that a double spend is not a risk. And so in their previous blog post back in March, I believe, they kind of went into an update for the 2auth recovery if you were to lose it. And I will say right now, if you've lost your mnemonic seed, they can't help you. But if you still have access to your seed, they're instituting a new process where you can kind of contact them in the app, reset things, and pretty much have a grace period, which it's looking like is going to be around a year. But after pretty much going through and initiating this process and the grace period expiring without anybody else having access to the seed contesting a delayed withdrawal, allowing you to recover your funds. And so this, I know the timeout might seem kind of long for everybody, but it's a recovery method without the 2FA that was something not prior in their terms of service or their design. So this is clear attempts to improve the one thing I would say has been a big friction for users. And second, they've recently updated to Bech32 support, so native SegWit support, and are also planning on transitioning the time lock refund process to use CSV, a relative time lock, instead of CLTV, which is like an absolute like block height or time-based time lock where you can't spend before. And so like these guys are making like big design changes here to improve, I guess, the safety from user fuck-ups in terms of the 2FA, and a little more smooth time lock refund process to be able to depend on or not have to trust them as much. And so again, like this is still kind of in progress, and if anybody uses this wallet or starts recommending it to people, be absolutely crystal clear about the necessity to maintain the 2FA backup and your word seed. Like what I do, I have a bunch of old like smartphones. Whenever I use a Google Authenticator, for instance, I generally scan the QR code into multiple devices so that if something happens to one of them, I have a backup. But, you know, as these improvements roll out, I think this wallet is really moving in a direction to be a very nice balance between having control of your coins yourself and kind of having a little bit of a safety net for extra security and saving kind of less technically competent users from kind of fucking up and losing access to their funds.
Yeah, man. Green Address was one of those wallets I was recommending and using a little bit back there last year. But as of late, it was kind of like not so much in my list. But to see these updates coming down the line and see that they're the guys are still working on getting the usability and to where not so many maybe accidents to where you lose your coins like you did that pulge, and a lot of people are worried about that, and I understand that, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of dropped it. So to see that sort of pick back up in that positive direction is a good thing. Definitely going to keep my eye on it.
All right, any comments, or are we sliding along?
Slippity slide. I think we're slippity sliding. SBI.
All right. So we recently covered VCTRADE, an exchange ran by SBI Holdings in Japan, recently opened a alpha period for registered users of SBI Holdings. It has officially publicly launched, and right now they are trading and supporting Ripple, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. And so now it's, this is one of the biggest banks in Japan, looking like it's shaping up to potentially be, if not already, the biggest bank-operated crypto exchange in the world right now. And I mean, it's kind of a nice, I guess, canary in the coal mine to see how institutions like this that are directly operated by legacy banks are going to play out and function in the ecosystem. Although one thing I do want to point out that is kind of silly to me, the exchange has a minimum age requirement of 20 to register and a maximum of 70. And I am not at all familiar with Japanese law as far as age limits for access to financial products, but I gotta say, as an American, it seems very strange to me that they have an upper limit or age limit on people able to use the platform. I mean, it's especially given the tendency for, pretty long lifespans in most developed Asian countries. Like that, it just seems really weird to me that they're not allowing older people after the point of 70 to trade on this exchange.
There's like a lot of, cultural heritage there. I don't know. I'm just like thinking, I was just listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History yesterday, and he released a new one, and it's all about Japan. And some of their, one of their things, I can't remember the name of it, was like, sometimes you're given an order to do something, and it's your duty to fight back as like the younger generation against the old and the new versus the traditional. And maybe that's a little bit of that. And I don't know. But, different strokes for different folks, I guess.
I mean, I don't know what the elderly living or retirement situation is in Japan, but the only thing I could think of why they would have an upper age limit is because maybe there's a lot of older Japanese people who are buying into Bitcoin, and they think that that's maybe they're afraid it presents a systemic risk to retirement schemes or something.
Possibly, but Ripple, that was the only thing where it's like I'm looking at this and I'm like, dude, Ripple is like, and Bcash and Bitcoin. It just feels like, yeah, it's going to be a good canary to watch for sure, just to see what's going to happen there.
Well, I mean, Ripple was originally like the first asset that this exchange was kind of planned to integrate with. And I mean, it seems, at least from my perspective, as an American watching news over there, that Japanese like companies in the space have kind of been hedging a little more with Bcash, and it seems to be like very tapered hedging, at least in the case of GMO. Like they've kind of been allocating hash rate to Bcash, but mostly a very small portion in proportion with its size relative to Bitcoin. So I mean, it's not really that shocking for me personally.
All right, man. Yeah. Thanks in crypto is bound to happen. So what else is going on, man? It looks like we're running up on time. We might have to speed through some.
Well, I'm going to switch the order up here because it makes sense. But GMO, I believe we briefly covered this before, has been planning since 2016 to open a internet-based bank with plans to kind of build in blockchain technology as some kind of settlement aspect of the bank services. Not very clear on exactly how it's going to integrate, but it's, I don't know. I like private blockchains for the whole are pretty much a waste of time in my opinion. But to look back at I forget how long ago it was, but we covered a study that was actually done by a European central bank and the Bank of Japan on blockchains for settlement. And compared to like a lot of the other nonsense being pushed out by central banks and other financial institutions, it was actually a very objective and impartial study of things. Like they actually established a system, ran through objective measurements of the like performance metrics and kind of how that lined up in comparison to traditional systems and the cost to benefit ratio. And so, like I said, in general, these kinds of things are incredibly stupid, but given the indication based on that report and other research from Japan, they seem much more in line with like the St. Louis branch of the US Fed. Like they are actually approaching this from a blank slate and really looking at the objective like observations they can make, as opposed to just kind of following the hype. So I mean, I don't think this is going to add anything in terms of decentralization or censorship resistance or really any of the things that we're here in this space for. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't kind of curious how they were planning on kind of integrating, a blockchain system into this bank services, because it really seems like what they're trying to do is really offer banking service as cheaply and like widely as possible. Yeah, I'm just kind of interested to see how that's going to play out from, an area where most of the research into this things is actually research and not just hype.
Yeah, this was one of the places where I saw blockchain in an article and I wasn't flippant about it, because GMO is, such a big internet infrastructure company over there in Japan that that we've seen them building the miners. Like they're in talks with Samsung. Like they're doing things, in the realm. They're already a good percentage of their employees are getting paid in Bitcoin or different cryptos. I can't remember which. I mean, I'm sure it's Bitcoin is one of them for sure. But this is where I could just understand. Yeah, a company this big that's going to try and make a big enough footprint in the space. I can understand them trying to do like a clean slate. Can we figure out a way to create some sort of liquidity for basically within our own company and the way that we handle business, and how can that affect our bottom lines and all that? I could see them wanting to take that clean slate look at it. So I also wasn't like, oh, they're just following the hype. I'm like, okay, these guys, they might be trying to actually figure out if they can do something with this, and maybe it'll be a year or two before they say that there was nothing there. But you have a big group of guys like this working on it with enough research. If they come out the other side saying that there's nothing there, that might be really good in the long run.
All right, and second to last story. David Solomon has been appointed as the new CEO of Goldman Sachs. And he's kind of reiterating a little more positively some of the statements and sentiments put forth by Lloyd Blankfein, as far as, looking to really expand the crypto offerings that Goldman Sachs has available, aside from clearing futures, like potentially moving into direct crypto services and trading. And I mean, let's see what the bank does.
How much you want to bet Lloyd Blankfein shows up on an FCC staff and approves Goldman Sachs for like one of the first, like something, man? That's the way I see it. I'm like looking at it. I'm like, yeah, he's leaving there, so now he's going to go over there and he's going to do this. We know the way this game works.
I mean, I'm just mostly interested to see like how fast they follow through, because like I was kind of saying with BlackRock, that statement really kind of makes me think back to Jamie Dimon. And I mean, it's I don't know. Let's just see how this war of codes in the financial institutions kind of plays out.
Yeah, this is the crypto financial institution battle.
I just want to point out this article is written by the same journalist who wrote the Kodak article that I criticized yesterday.
You always catch that. Yes, it was.
Yes, I do. I only noticed it just now when you had on the screen, but like I usually look for that now because when especially TechCrunch stuff, I always make sure if it's written by John Biggs, I will not touch it.
Well, it explains why it was very light on details.
Yeah. But I also, once I think I've said this before a few times on the show when we've talked about Goldman Sachs, is that, I just don't care what they do because, you know, they were behind the financial crisis, and it's like, do I really want them to be heavily involved in Bitcoin? No. I would wish they would just, you know, if I don't care what they do. They can get in, they can stay out. Doesn't matter to me because I'm not interested in using any of their services.
I'm with you on that. Maybe they'll eat the blue pill.
Neither am I, but neither am I, but I am interested to see how them providing services affects the liquidity flooding into the space. But I guess, all right. Guess last story / kind of sort of final thought. As Rick mentioned earlier, he was watching a hearing. I believe that was the one by the House Agriculture Committee. And I think just momentarily there should be another hearing with the House Committee on Financial Services. So that is 2 congressional committees dealing with cryptocurrencies going on today. And, you know, it's again like the second one should just be starting. So there's no real
real
details that we can offer right now, but I would highly recommend checking it out. I just threw the link to the one just starting in the chat box, and we'll probably drop it in the show notes after we get off the air. But I guess last thing is this strange tweet by the CFTC yesterday. Yes, here is Daniel Gorfine, a director at the CFTC, the Chief Innovation Officer, with his daughters, one of which holds a sign saying, "I break for Bitcoin, #dream big." So let's see what that means for this hearing that's about to start.
Yeah, just real quick, I did like write down a little bit of notes from what I was watching. Like it sounded like that, you know, that House of Agricultural Committee, there was a couple of worries there about, you know, like IRS needing to get in there to tax these assets. There was some worry about, you know, 4% of the wallets holding a majority of the Bitcoin. And like, is this, you know, power too small a group of hands to hold that much power? And like, you know, they stressed that some of these addresses are in Russia. And, you know, but there was some good rebuttal there as far as talking about exchanges holding most of these funds as a custodial thing. And, you know, there was a lot of, you know, can't see how all this works from Congressman Allen there. He was saying that he didn't understand how this could be worked as a reserve and how this currency market could form. And, you know, again, some rebuttal there about Venezuela as the example, showing how, you know, the people might need a currency for the people like this. And, you know, in a way, like, you know, where big global players like us need it for competition to the banks. And then the Allen guy responded back, like, what nation would run this thing? And, you know, then again, another like kind of a push of political geopolitics saying, like, is China running this thing? And, you know, again, they were sort of saying, like, yeah, there's some mining going on in China and Russia, but, you know, they're moving fast in this because they see it as a possible payment system to adopt. And, you know, one of the funnier moments was Congressman Soto brought up Satoshi's Millions and who is Satoshi. And Amber Balder from JP Morgan, she said that Satoshi is female. Like, I don't know. She knows. And, you know, and so Mr. Yoho, he was saying, talking about the recent statement saying that ETH isn't a security. And if ETH is labeled a security since 2015, what would be the outcome? And she had also responded that Ethereum is a distributed world computer. Don't think too much about it. Is what she told the congressman. And, you know, it sounded like she was trying to deflect the whole listing as a security towards Ethereum's gas than not Ethereum. And then the last sort of thing I really did hear that I was, you know, I like this is they were talking about broker, you know, dealers need to be held accountable for spoofing and wash trading. And, you know, we don't want to restrict development, but, you know, we don't want bad actors taking over. And how can law enforcement help? And, you know, the standard things we're thinking about, the gateways as far as the on-ramps, like, can you track these exchanges and where people are getting it? And Mr. Fairfield from Washington, where we know Bitmain's got an investment, was talking about AI to help track bad actors. And yeah, Mr. Gorfine there of the CFTC is saying that they're playing a major role in tracking the progress of this enforcement. So that's the little bit of notes I picked up from about an hour of watching that.
That's a pretty good breakdown, Rick. Thanks. I guess that takes us into the final thoughts before I bet most of you shuffle off to watch the next hearing. Jeannie?
Yeah, so this one is kind of unrelated to cryptocurrency stuff, but I just thought it was funny because if you're not like at least checking the crime a day account, you should, because it's hilarious. The things that have been turned into federal crimes are absolutely hilarious. And whoever runs the crime a day account actually posted this tweet today, showing that they, because their account is a crime a day, so they tweet one federal crime a day. And their progress bar is a bit empty because there are a lot of federal crimes that if you're only tweeting one per day, you're not going to get very far. So according to his estimate, he won't finish until February 2648. And that's assuming the number of the federal crimes laws don't increase. That's if they stay constant. So yeah. Pretty hilarious.
Oh my Lord.
And this is kind of just a PSA because once again, there's been a story about people who have been SIM swapped, and so I just recommend. I sometimes look at my Twitter analytics because I don't know how accurate the data is, but according to Twitter analytics on my account, about 20% of my followers, which is the largest category, are T-Mobile users. So if you're a T-Mobile user, you should definitely be looking at this because it mainly focuses on people who have been SIM swapped, who have T-Mobile devices and use the T-Mobile service. So please be careful if you're especially if you're storing cryptocurrency on your smartphone, or if you're using your smartphone as a second factor for any of your cryptocurrency accounts. You should. I believe, I don't know if they linked it in this article, but Lorenzo did also publish another, or someone at Motherboard published a piece that showed how you make your account slightly more secure if you're with T-Mobile and things like that. Although the biggest takeaway from this article was the fact that the way that a lot of these SIM swappers are attacking people's phones now and their accounts is actually to just pay off people at the phone company. Like they don't even have to social engineer them anymore. They're just paying them off. And it's like, apparently the phone companies are just refusing to do any investigation into this and release the data. So we have no idea how often it happens, but that's how they claim that it's happening. That's really hard to prevent. The only way you can really prevent that is if you get a voice over IP number. Like for example, with Google, if you don't consider Google as part of your threat model, the only way to really avoid that is to get a VoIP number. Though that obviously comes with some usability issues because not every phone is able to accept VoIP calls. So, just a PSA about that. And I also wanted to, not to get too much into detail, but I just want to make a general PSA in general about people who give security advice, like especially how to store cryptocurrencies. When you are hearing advice from people who are talking about this stuff, you need to ask them a few questions. First of all, have they ever actually used the method or tools that they are advising you to use? You ask them that. You also ask them, have they actually evaluated the software that they are telling you to use? Have they ever actually looked at it? If they can't answer yes to both of those questions, they should not be giving security advice. So that's just a general PSA that I want to give out.
Yeah, security. Yeah, that all needs to be. You want to make sure you do your due diligence before you start listening to somebody about security. And the whole SIM swap situation with paying off the phone. As you were talking about it, I was like, man, it's going to get to a point. And then you said it. I was like, oh my goodness, they're already doing it. They're already just like going directly to the phone companies to bribe somebody to get your data so that they can SIM swap you. That's we're at a scary spot.
Yep. All right, Rick, final thoughts are up.
Okay, yeah. So gotta give Mike and Spade some credit for finding this one, man. This was pretty funny. I saw it. Like, did you click that article? It says, yeah, you got to go all the way down to the bottom because it's talking about his tweet storm about, you know, what happened there in Taiwan. But then at the very bottom, it says, where is it? Is it at the bottom there anymore? Where it says that he made an offer to give people money. Like they were bringing up the Twitter scam.
They probably removed it.
Jeez, man. Like I just read that a little bit.
They do that.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry. I saw it too, so I know you're not making anything up. I didn't archive it. It's probably archived if you check, but I saw it myself, so yeah, it was definitely there.
So in the article, as they were talking about how like Elon mentioned that he was going to give an Ethereum giveaway, like they just like kept going into it. Like the bot was actually Elon. I thought that was pretty funny. It seems like they've already gotten the word that that was a scam. And so they deleted it and edited that. But yeah, that was pretty funny. And thought on that is definitely we need to, you know, get Jack to pay attention to these Twitter bots because it does seem like they've come back in a full force. And the other thought was a samurai tweet where I saw the other day, you know, like we were just talking about with the CoinJoin and tumblers and everything. They've been working on this whirlpool with using Boltzmann. And that just sounds really interesting. And I just wanted to just kind of bring it up and say, hey, guys, this looks awesome. I really appreciate everything you are doing. I'm going to be following this with a keen interest. Thanks, guys.
Like, keep up the fucking work on CoinJoin, especially using actual metrics to measure how successful they are. So fucking, like, seriously, samurai guys, you fucking rock.
Yeah, always. Good job, guys.
All right. And on that note, hopefully, unless there are any last minute changes, which I've not heard anything, we are probably going to have a special edition for you guys tomorrow. So see you guys tomorrow. Might be a little earlier than usual, but until then, toodaloo.
Later, everyone.
Bye.